Okay, again, I've broken this lecture up into two parts to just try to make it a little easier to take. And again, I highly recommend you read the chapter in the book. This lecture is a combination of lectures I've given over the years. There's things in this lecture that are not in the book, but there's detail in the book that isn't in this lecture also. So watch the video, also read the book. All right, and again, it isn't like you're just trying to pass this class learning these skills. You're going to be writing research papers all throughout your college career. There are those of you who'll be smart enough to go on and get your graduate degrees, and that's all research. So you need to learn how to do this well. So today what we're mostly looking at is incorporating your sources into your paper and a little bit with writing and revising. All right, so make sure as you start to lay out your paper that the organization that you've determined that you want and the support that you have are appropriate to the type of argument you're making. Now, I'm not going into all the different types of organizations. Those patterns are sitting on page 445. So have a look at those and then realize that you may have a combination. So this is very similar to when I teach Comp 1, I'm not happy having to teach cause and effect essays and comparison essays because what most real writing is you will use a comparison paragraph and right after that a cause and effect paragraph. So the same thing here, so that it's a combination of organizational schemes. It may not just be a single organizational scheme, so you have to decide what's going to work best for the topic and for the type of argument you're trying to make. All right, now make sure that you do have an outline. As soon as you can establish one, I would establish one, especially if you know that you're not real well organized in your thinking. It tends to be, and this may not always be true. I mean, it's just a generalization. But normally people who are very creative, that have no trouble coming up with original ideas, tend to be less organized. And so can really benefit from the outline. Now, the opposite of that is there's people who are very organized and are perfect for certain jobs because of that incredible organizational skill, but then they excuse me, they have a harder time coming up with the ideas that they want to write about. So you have to decide which type you are, but you should have an outline, at the beginning of your process. Now, and I mean, this is actually, when you're really starting to get the paper written, not at the actual beginning of the process of the research and all, but once you've got an idea of what you're actually going to do. So once you've got that, make sure that you have enough research supporting all your topics. Any claims that you're making, any subclaims, those have to be supported by facts, statistics, anecdotal, all the different types of support that you can have. Now, make sure all of your original ideas. So hopefully, this isn't just you repeating what other people have said. You've got your own ideas on the subject. Make sure that they're in your outline. And once you've done that, you need to identify where you may actually need more research and support. All right? You want to make sure that every single one of your ideas is well supported. Now, writing the research paper, you want to organize your notes, however you do it. I imagine most of you are just doing it on a computer. For longer papers, and when I write or attempt to write novels, I like to have everything on note cards because then I can lay them out on the ground and I can rearrange them. For a paper this short, that isn't really all that necessary. So if you've got it in a Word document or a Google Doc, just organize it the best you can to go with your outline. Now, you want to revisit your thesis. Make sure your thesis is clear. Make sure it's the best thesis that you can write. Look at where you placed your thesis. Normally, it comes at the last sentence of your opening paragraph. Or if you've got more than one introductory paragraph at the end of the last introductory paragraph, you could have 2, 3 introductory paragraphs. You can place it elsewhere, though. You just have to decide where's the best place to place it. Now, once you've done that, make sure you've decided on your final thesis. And again, until the paper is actually turned in, you're not married to any thesis. You can at any time change it, but you should have a final thesis that you think is going to be your thesis. You should have gone from a working thesis, which was just a general idea of what you wanted to write about, to what the thesis actually is going to be in the paper. But again, that can be changed at any time. Now, once you've set the organization, write down the final organization and compare it to the initial. So you should have had an initial outline, which is what you're going to turn in, I think, in a week or two. And week 5, you're going to turn it in. So that'll be next week. That should be your initial, and then you should have a better one for the actual paper. See if the changes you've made actually are. All right, now backwards planning, I've already talked about this. When you're getting ready to write a paper, you need to know how long it takes you to do things. If you know that you're, a procrastinator and it's going to take you a week to actually get the final draft done, and the final draft's due on the 30th, well then put down that I need to start writing that final draft on the 23rd, because it's going to take me a week. I'm going to screw around. I'm going to check YouTube. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be on my Instagram, on my TikTok, and eventually I'll get around to doing it. But it'll take me a week to do it. Same thing with the rough draft. You work your way back. All right. So this we discussed already. Now I can't emphasize this enough. If you know you're going to use something, or you think you're pretty sure you're going to use a source in your paper, I would have a working works cited page where I was putting down all the information for that source, the author's name, the title of the article, the journal, the database it came from, etc., whatever you need for the citation. Because what you're going to find is you're going to finally get your paper done. You're like, oh, thank God, the paper's done. And then you're going to go, oh, wait, I have to do the works cited page. But if you've already put all your sources on a page, all you have to do is alphabetize it. You just have to switch things around. If you haven't kept that information, now you've got to go back to all your sources and start gathering the information again, and you may have trouble finding the information, and you end up wasting all this time. So all right, now when you're incorporating your sources, you want to quote sparingly. Be careful of this. I have this trouble, especially in literature classes, where people say, well, I'll just use a 20-line quote and then I don't have to write so much. No, there's only certain times you quote. And so you want to quote sparingly. Most of the time you want to paraphrase or summarize your source. That's almost always. Make sure you begin and end your paper with your words. Do not begin with somebody else's quotation or end with somebody else's quotations, and do a good job by documenting your sources and delineating your words from the sources. It shouldn't be any problem to tell what you are saying and what your source is saying. Try to do your best to make sure the source material flows, and always use, if you can, in-text citations. So those are Dr. Smith says in her book, and then put a page number at the end of that. We'll do an MLA next week, but hopefully most of you know already how to do MLA. But you want to either say who the quote is, or you want to put a parenthetical citation after the quote. So that's a parenthetical citation, where in parentheses at the end of the quote you put the person's name and the page number if there's a page number. All right, avoid excessive quoting. Make sure you've got an effective introduction. You want to draw your audience in. Try to write these as if you're trying to get it published in a magazine somewhere. So you want to make it interesting so that the editors say, yeah, I'll publish this. Make sure your paragraphs are unified and coherent. So what I mean by this, if you didn't take my Comp 1 class, is unified means that you have a topic sentence and every other sentence in that paragraph supports the topic sentence and relates to that. That's a unified paragraph. You don't start going off in some other direction. Everything relates to that topic sentence. Coherent means that each idea logically links to the next idea. It isn't like you're jumping from one idea to the next, and there's no logical connection. All right, always use your source materials properly. Make sure if you're quoting, you quote in context. So don't take something out of context, so that you actually have somebody saying something that they didn't say. I had students once writing a paper against, this was years ago, writing against gay marriage. And they quoted this guy as saying that when people come out of the closet in high school, they cause violence. That's not what he said. He said many times when people come out of the closet and are open about being gay in high school, people become violent towards them, like homophobic people. So what they said, because they'd taken it out of context, was the exact opposite of what the author was actually saying. All right, and use different types of introductory tags. I hadn't thought about that. I will try to find, I have a page that has 60 different ways to say said, and it's not exactly said, but different ways to introduce sources. I'll see if I can find that, scan it in, and I'll upload it onto the website. All right, there's the first half of this lecture. If you can handle it, go on to the second half, or take a break and then go on to the second half between them. Document as you go are the best changes that you could make.